For decades, Jesse Duplantis built an empire preaching prosperity. From a Louisiana headquarters in Destrehan, his ministry reached millions through television, claiming to share the gospel worldwide. By 2018, the organization employed around 50 staff and generated millions annually. He traveled in private jets, 3 of them, paid for in cash, telling followers that God blessed the faithful with material wealth. Then came the 21st of May 2018. In a video titled "This Week with Jesse," Duplantis stood in his ministry's mansion, a nearly 35,000 square foot residence, and told viewers God wanted him to have a 4th jet. Not just any jet, a Dassault Falcon 7X worth $54 million. If Jesus was physically on the earth today, he wouldn't be riding a donkey, he said. The backlash was instant. But what really unraveled wasn't the jet request itself, it was what came after. The Hurricane Ida response that fell flat, the Daystar departure in January 2025, the pattern of asking for more while giving less. This is the story of how a $54 million jet became the symbol of everything wrong with prosperity gospel, and how one man's ministry became a case study in unchecked excess. Jesse Duplantis didn't start big. He began preaching in 1976, a former rock band musician who'd found religion. By 1978, he'd formally established Jesse Duplantis Ministries. The headquarters in Destrehan, Louisiana, 1973 Ormond Boulevard, became the nerve center of a global operation. The ministry broadcast on television networks, published a magazine called Voice of the Covenant, and maintained offices in the United Kingdom and Australia. Production quality was exceptional. Professional staging, broadcast-grade equipment, polished messaging. Duplantis combined prosperity theology with comedy, telling wild stories and making audiences laugh while teaching them that poverty was a curse and wealth was God's favor. By the 2000s, attendance at Covenant Church, the local congregation connected to the ministry, grew steadily. The message was simple: give generously, believe boldly, receive abundantly. And for years, people believed. The revenue model was multifaceted. Jesse Duplantis Ministries generated income through television broadcasts, book sales, speaking fees, and donations. Business database Dun & Bradstreet estimated the ministry's annual revenue at around $6.22 million, with approximately 50 employees. Duplantis himself claimed the ministry had received $500 million over its lifetime. "I thought I could save the world with $100 million. He once preached, recounting conversations where God allegedly gave him $100 million 3 separate times. The ministry owned jets outright, paid for in cash. They owned a fuel farm. The Destrehan property, a 35,000 to 40,000 square foot mansion classified as a parsonage, was tax-exempt. Critics, including the Trinity Foundation watchdog organization, had monitored Duplantis for over a decade, questioning whether such extravagance aligned with the gospel he preached. But the donations kept coming. By 2018, Jesse Duplantis had cultivated a carefully crafted public image. He appeared on Trinity Broadcasting Network and partnered with fellow prosperity preachers like Kenneth Copeland and Creflo Dollar. His weekly video show reached hundreds of thousands. The bio was spotless: a man on a mission to reach every soul on earth. In a 2016 video with Kenneth Copeland, the two defended their use of private jets, with Copeland infamously describing commercial air travel as being "in a long tube with a bunch of demons." Duplantis nodded along. The lifestyle was justified, they said, because ministry work required efficiency. But watchdog groups noted something else. While Duplantis lived in luxury, financial transparency was minimal. The ministry had tax-exempt status. No public Form 990 seconds were required. The real numbers remained hidden. On the 21st of May 2018, everything shifted. Jesse Duplantis posted a video to his ministry's website. In it, he stood in his mansion, pointing to 4 framed photographs of jets on the wall. He described the first 3 planes, all purchased for the Lord, and then pointed to the 4th photograph. "We believe in God for a brand new Falcon 7X, so we can go anywhere in the world, one stop, he said. The Dassault Falcon 7X cost approximately $54 million. It had 3 engines, could travel nearly 6,000 nautical miles non-stop, and seated up to 16 passengers. Duplantis explained that God had spoken to him. "I want you to believe in me for a Falcon 7X. When he worried about the price, God allegedly replied, "Jesse, I didn't ask you to pay for it. I asked you to believe for it." The public reaction was swift and brutal. CNN, ABC News, The Washington Post, and dozens of other outlets picked up the story. Social media erupted. Critics called it greed, disguised as faith. Religious leaders condemned the request, arguing that tens of millions could better serve the poor than fund a private jet. Duplantis pushed back. In a follow-up video days later, he clarified, "I'm not asking you to pay for my plane. I'm asking you to pray for my plane." He claimed people had called wanting to contribute, but insisted he hadn't solicited donations. The distinction felt thin. The damage control continued. He emphasized that the planes belonged to the ministry, not to him personally. But the visual had already sunk in. A preacher standing in a mansion, asking followers to fund a jet. The fallout wasn't just about one jet request. It reopened questions about the entire prosperity gospel model. Why did preachers who claimed to serve the poor need private jets at all? Other televangelists had made similar requests. Creflo Dollars, $60 million. Gulfstream G, $650 in 2015. Kenneth Copeland's Gulfstream V, but Duplantis's timing and phrasing made it viral. The phrase, "Jesus wouldn't be riding a donkey," became a meme. Late-night talk shows mocked it. Religious critics condemned it. Even some prosperity gospel supporters questioned the optics. The National Association of Evangelicals distanced themselves. And beneath the surface, a deeper question lingered. If Duplantis already had 3 jets and claimed the ministry had received $500 and million, why was he asking for more? The money trail revealed troubling patterns. Trinity Foundation, a Dallas-based religious watchdog, had monitored Jesse Duplantis Ministries for over a decade. The organization's president, Ole Anthony, pointed out that Duplantis's tax-exempt status meant residents of St. Charles Parish were effectively subsidizing his lifestyle. The Destrehan mansion, classified as a church parsonage, was exempt from property taxes, potentially saving tens of thousands of dollars annually. The ministry owned multiple jets, a fuel farm, and a broadcast facility, yet financial transparency remained minimal. When the ministry registered as an association of churches, it was no longer required to file public IRS, Form 992. Donors had no way to verify how contributions were spent. Theological critics had been sounding alarms for years. The prosperity gospel, the teaching that God rewards faith with material wealth, contradicted centuries of Christian teaching on humility, service, and self-sacrifice. Critics pointed to Jesus' warnings about wealth. It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Duplantis taught the opposite. He once preached, "I never ask God for a need. What a waste of spiritual energy. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of in my life." Poverty, he said, was a curse to be broken. Yet the National Association of Evangelicals, mainstream denominations, and even some charismatic leaders questioned this theology. Where was the accountability? Where was the concern for the poor? The jet request, critics argued, was the logical endpoint of a theology centered on self. The pattern extended beyond jets. In 2007, Duplantis resigned from the Board of Regents at Oral Roberts University amid financial scrutiny. Fellow regents Creflo Dollar and Kenneth Copeland resigned as well, and university president Richard Roberts stepped down. The board was swept clean after the university accepted a $70 million donation conditional on a new era of transparent governance and accountability. Duplantis claimed ministry demands made it difficult to serve. Years later, flight records showed Duplantis had taken thousands of trips on his private planes, including to Hawaii and Las Vegas, according to the St. Charles Herald Guide. Were these ministry trips or personal travel? The lack of financial disclosure made it impossible to know. The Trinity Foundation documented a pattern: lavish lifestyle, minimal transparency, and constant requests for more. Then came Hurricane Ida. On the 29th of August 2021, the Category 4 storm devastated Louisiana. Street, Charles Parish, where Duplantis' ministry was headquartered, was one of the hardest-hit areas. Residents expected their most prominent religious leader to step up. Instead, criticism mounted. Duplantis' ministry donated $100,000 in generators to the community, a significant sum, but modest given the ministry's resources and Duplantis' estimated $20 million net worth. Community members noted the disconnect. A man who asked for $54 million for a jet contributed $100,000 to his devastated hometown. Where's the rest? Locals asked. Weeks later, Duplantis preached that the second coming was delayed due to lack of donations, while touting his multimillionaire status. The optics were disastrous. Faith without works, critics said, quoting scripture back at him. The prosperity gospel model depends on spectacle. Ministries like Jesse Duplantis Ministries operate on massive fixed costs: facilities, broadcast equipment, staff salaries, jets, fuel farms. To sustain it, donations must flow constantly. This creates pressure to always ask for more, hence the jet requests, the book sales, the television slots. But it also creates vulnerability. When trust fractures, the model collapses. Hartford Institute for Religion Research data shows megachurches thrive on personality and spectacle. Remove either, and attendance drops. The prosperity gospel intensifies this. Followers give because they believe blessing will return. When that blessing doesn't materialize, or when they see leaders living in luxury while they struggle, the backlash is fierce. Jesse Duplantis wasn't just selling theology, he was selling hope. And when hope looks like a $54 million jet, people start asking harder questions. Duplantis wasn't alone. The prosperity gospel movement produced multiple collapses. Robert Tilton faced fraud investigations in the 1990s. Creflo's $60 million jet request in 2015 sparked outrage. Kenneth Copeland's financial empire faced scrutiny. In 2024 and 2025, Gateway Church's Robert Morris resigned over abuse allegations. Hillsong collapsed amid scandals. Mars Hill imploded under Mark Driscoll. The pattern was consistent: charismatic leader, prosperity message, lavish lifestyle, minimal accountability, eventual scandal. What made Duplantis notable was the sheer audacity of the jet request. It crystallized everything wrong with the model: the personality cult, the wealth extraction, the theological justifications for excess. When the brand becomes bigger than the mission, critics warned, collapse is inevitable. And the collapse had begun. The broader data told a sobering story. Gallup research showed declining religious attendance across America, accelerating post-pandemic. Younger generations were leaving churches, citing hypocrisy and financial scandals as key reasons. Megachurches struggled to fill seats. Giving plateaued. The prosperity gospel, once a growth engine, became a liability. Denominations distanced themselves. Mainstream media covered scandals relentlessly. By 2025, the movement faced a reckoning. Jesse Duplantis' ministry continued operating, but its influence had waned. The jets still flew, the mansions still stood, but the crowds thinned, donations slowed. And the question loomed: if the message promised prosperity, why were so many prosperity preachers struggling? The empty seats told a story the theology couldn't explain. Faith, it turned out, couldn't be bought. In January 2025, Jesse Duplantis made another move. He announced that his program would no longer air on Daystar television network. Daystar, a major Christian broadcaster, was embroiled in scandal involving alleged sexual abuse, cover-up, and financial misconduct. Duplantis claimed God told him to leave months earlier, and his contract expired in December 2024. He denied the departure was related to Daystar's controversies or financial trouble. Other high-profile hosts, Lance Wallnau, Jack Graham, Joyce Meyer, left around the same time. Duplantis's net worth remained estimated at $20 million. The ministry still operated from Destrahan. Covenant Church still held services. But the reach had shrunk. The global vision seemed smaller. What remained was a ministry that had survived scandal, but lost something harder to quantify: credibility. The $54 million jet was never purchased. Years later, Duplantis still flew his older jets. The Falcon 7X remained a photograph on the wall, a symbol of ambition unfulfilled. But the damage was done. The image of a preacher standing in a mansion, asking for a jet while claiming to serve the poor, became shorthand for everything people distrusted about modern ministry. Did Duplantis believe his own message? Was it greed, self-deception, or something more complex? The question remains unanswered. The jets still fly. The broadcasts continue. The prosperity gospel lives on, though diminished. But the question that haunts Destrahan, Louisiana, and every place Duplantis preaches is simpler. When did the gospel become about the messenger instead of the message? When did faith become a transaction? And when a preacher asks for $54 million while the faithful struggle, what kind of God is being served? Share your thoughts below.